Cadet Mercer, if you cannot keep up, quit now. I will not risk an entire class because Earth sent me a publicity stunt. Commander Marcus Vare said it loudly enough for all 32 cadets to hear, and 36 hours later, Jack Mercer would remember those words while looking across a training chamber where almost nobody was standing. Red emergency lights washed the steel walls in dull crimson. Warning tones pulsed overhead. Medical drones moved quietly between exhausted cadets sprawled on padded recovery mats, checking breathing rates, hydration, and body temperature. Dax Corin, the Academy's top-ranked cadet, had made it within 12 feet of the final marker before his legs simply refused another step. Now he sat against the wall with an oxygen mask over his face, staring at the floor like it had personally betrayed him. Lena Voss was nearby beneath a thermal blanket, awake but trembling, arguing weakly with a medical drone that insisted she stop trying to sit up. Commander Vare stood beneath the main display with his hands locked behind his back. He had spent 27 years training soldiers from the Coalition's harshest worlds. He had watched recruits fail, officers panic, and decorated veterans discover limits they never knew they had. He had never seen this. The display above him flashed one number again. Class failure rate, 96.4%. Vare stared at it, jaw tight. That is impossible. Nobody answered. Then he heard something that did not belong in the room. Crinkle. Vare slowly turned. At the far end of the chamber, sitting on a sealed emergency supply case, was Jack Mercer. The human looked terrible. His short brown hair was soaked with sweat. His gray academy shirt clung to his back. There was dust across his face, his hands were shaking slightly, and he had one boot unlaced because his left foot had started swelling during the final mile. Jack was not smiling. He was not celebrating. He was eating a turkey sandwich. Vare walked toward him. Cadet Mercer. Jack looked up while chewing, swallowed, then glanced toward the wall clock. Sir, what are you doing? Jack looked at the sandwich, then back at Vare. Lunch. Several cadets lifted their heads. Even Dax looked over. Vare's expression hardened. Your classmates are under medical observation. Jack immediately stopped eating. Is somebody critical? No. Anybody going to the hospital? No. Jack nodded, visibly relieved, and took another bite. Vare stared at him as though the human had just violated a law of physics. You completed the entire Class 7 course. Yes, sir. The same course that incapacitated nearly every cadet in this room. Jack rubbed his sore shoulder and winced. It was a rough morning. Dax actually pulled his oxygen mask away. A rough morning? Jack glanced at him. You okay? Dax had no answer. Jack looked back down at his sandwich. His hands were still trembling. That detail bothered Vare more than anything else. The human had suffered. The course had hurt him. He simply had not stopped. Vare looked again at the failure rate, then at the quiet man finishing lunch beneath it. Something was wrong with everything the Academy believed about humans. 36 hours earlier, Vare had intended to prove Earth did not belong there. By lunchtime, Earth had become the question nobody in the room knew how to answer. 36 hours earlier, Jack Mercer stepped off the transport shuttle carrying one duffel bag, a paper cup of coffee, and the uncomfortable knowledge that half the Academy had already decided what he was before he arrived. Orion Coalition Survival Academy stretched across a windswept plateau beneath two pale moons, its dark training towers rising nearly half a mile above the landing field. Jack had seen military bases back home that tried to look intimidating. This place did not have to try. Cadets from 21 worlds crossed the terminal in fitted uniforms designed around bodies with scales, feathers, armored plates, and joints Jack could not name. Then there was Jack, 5 feet 11 inches tall, brown hair, ordinary boots, ordinary hands, and skin that suddenly seemed ridiculously exposed. That is the human, someone muttered. Jack kept walking. He had learned years ago that turning around usually gave people exactly what they wanted. At registration, Lena Voss was waiting behind him, studying his coffee with open suspicion. Her silver-purple skin caught the overhead light whenever she moved. Is that the stimulant? She asked. Jack glanced at the cup. Coffee. Caffeine is classified as a defensive plant toxin on my world. That explains the price. Lena blinked, uncertain whether he was joking. Jack took another sip. Jack Mercer. Lena Voss. She looked him over. You seem smaller than the report suggested. Story of my life. A deep laugh came from behind them. Dax Corin stepped forward, broad-shouldered and nearly 7 feet tall, his copper-red skin marked by the dark ceremonial lines of a coalition military family. Earth sends one cadet, and everyone acts like a predator walked into the building. His eyes settled on Jack. No offense. None taken. You know who I am? Should I? Lena looked away to hide a smile. Dax did not. Before he could answer, every conversation in the terminal stopped. Commander Marcus Vare had entered. He moved with the controlled confidence of someone accustomed to rooms becoming quiet for him. His dark blue-gray skin showed the pale service markings of the Varathi Officer Corps. He stopped directly in front of Jack. Mercer, Commander, your medical file contains 17 pages of environmental exceptions. Sounds about right. High ultraviolet exposure tolerance, broad temperature adaptation, elevated gravity development, unusually aggressive immune response. Vare lowered the tablet. And yet your physical scores place you near the middle of this class. Jack could feel 30 pairs of eyes on him. Middle is still passing, sir. Dax gave a quiet laugh. Vare did not. This academy is not a cultural exchange program. I will not lower standards because Earth wants a flag in our graduating class. Jack felt the irritation rise immediately, hot and familiar. He wanted to tell Vare exactly where he could put that assumption. Instead, he thought about Dr. Rebecca Shaw telling him before departure that somebody here would eventually try to make him angry. Do not make their argument for them. Jack set his coffee on the registration counter. I am not asking you to lower anything, sir. For the first time, Vare seemed interested. An alarm suddenly sounded through the terminal. Heavy doors opened at the far end, revealing a massive training arena beyond them. Wind rushed inside, carrying dry heat and red dust. The orientation display changed to a single message. Class 7 evaluation. Dax stopped smiling. Lena went completely still. Jack looked from their faces to Vare. I thought Class 7 was for final year cadets. Usually. Vare stepped toward the arena. Tomorrow morning, we find out whether the stories about Earth are true. By sunrise, every cadet at Orion knew Commander Vare had moved the Class 7 evaluation forward by 3 months, and nobody believed the timing was an accident. Jack found Dr. Rebecca Shaw waiting outside the equipment bay while he tightened the straps on his training pack. Tell me this is normal, he said. Rebecca handed him a hydration pouch. It is legal. That was not my question. Then you already know the answer. Jack looked through the glass wall at the arena below. Dax was stretching with the confidence of someone who had spent his entire life preparing for rooms like this. Lena stood beside him, checking her respirator twice. Can Vare change the test because I am here? Jack asked. He can select any certified evaluation for an active class. So he can. Yes. Rebecca lowered her voice. Marcus Vare opposed Earth joining the Coalition military exchange program. He believes the deathworld designation gave humanity a reputation we have not earned. Jack pulled the pack onto his shoulders. He wants me to fail. He wants data proving you should fail. That bothered Jack more. Personal dislike was easy. A man with a theory could justify almost anything as evidence. Same rules? Jack asked. Same course. Same scoring. Same medical limits. No exceptions for me? None. Jack nodded. Good. Rebecca caught his arm before he walked away. Do not confuse pride with toughness, Jack. He gave her a tired half-smile. My mother has been telling me that since high school. In the briefing chamber, Vare stood before a three-dimensional map showing 40 miles of simulated terrain. Desert flats gave way to steep rock fields, flooded corridors, high-gravity zones, and a final endurance sector hidden behind a red security marker. Class 7 does not measure strength, Vare said. It measures function after comfort disappears. His eyes moved across the cadets and stopped briefly on Jack. Some cultures have built identities around surviving primitive environmental conditions. Stories are not qualifications. Dax glanced toward Jack. Jack studied the map. Cadet Mercer, Vare said. Something amusing? No, sir. Then why are you smiling? I was looking for the cafeteria. A few cadets laughed before catching themselves. Vare remained perfectly still. You are about to enter the most demanding certified survival course in Coalition space. Yes, sir. And your concern is food? Eventually. Dax shook his head. You really think this is funny? Jack turned toward him. No. I think I get hungry around noon. Vare touched the control panel. The floor beneath the cadets vibrated as enormous doors opened ahead. Dry air rolled into the chamber at 112 degrees Fahrenheit. Beyond the threshold stretched miles of red terrain under artificial sunlight. A countdown appeared overhead. 10 seconds. Lena whispered. My world closes public buildings at 90 degrees. Jack adjusted the brim of his cap. Smart people. 5 seconds. Dax leaned forward, ready to explode off the starting line. Jack did not. He loosened his shoulders, checked his water tube, and took one slow breath. The signal sounded. Dax launched ahead with half the class chasing him. Jack walked across the line. Ver watched his pace and made a note on his tablet. Already conserving energy, he said quietly. He knows he cannot compete. Rebecca, watching from the observation deck, said nothing. At mile 6, Dax was still leading. Jack had fallen to 19th. At mile 9, he was 23rd. Ver watched the ranking board with growing satisfaction. Then Rebecca noticed something the commander had not. Jack's pace had not changed by even 10 seconds per mile. Everyone else's had. She leaned closer to the monitor as the first cadet slowed. Then another. Jack passed both without speeding up. He simply kept moving, and the temperature was still climbing. By mile 12, the heat had stopped feeling dramatic and started feeling personal. Jack could taste salt on his lips, his shirt was soaked through, and every step kicked red dust against his boots. Ahead of him, Dax and 6 other cadets disappeared into the first rock sector, while Jack stayed exactly where he had been for the last hour, somewhere in the middle of the pack. Mercer is dropping again, Ver said from the observation deck. Rebecca checked the numbers. No, everyone else is speeding up. Ver glanced at her. There is a difference. There will be. Down on the course, Jack reached the first supply station and ignored the ranking display. 17th place. He drank 6 ounces of water, opened a small electrolyte packet, and checked his feet. Lena arrived 30 seconds later, breathing hard. You are stopping? She asked. 2 minutes. Dax is almost half a mile ahead. Jack pulled off one boot. Dax can have half a mile. Lena stared as he changed his socks. You brought extra socks? 3 pairs. Why? Jack looked up. Because wet feet can ruin your whole day. Lena seemed deeply disappointed by the answer. A siren cut through the air. The terrain ahead shifted. Steel barriers rose from beneath the sand, sealing the main trail, while mechanical drones lifted from hidden compartments along the canyon walls. Their training emitters painted bright, targeting marks across the ground. Movement drill, Lena said. That was scheduled for tomorrow. Jack shoved his boot back on. Guess tomorrow got here early. The first drone swept low. Cadets scattered between the rocks as harmless tracking pulses flashed around them. Dax sprinted through the center, using speed to stay ahead of the targeting system. Jack grabbed Lena by the shoulder of her training vest and pulled her behind a stone barrier as a red beam crossed the spot where she had been standing. I saw it, she protested. Good. See the next one sooner. 3 drones changed direction and boxed them against the canyon wall. Lena looked upward. We are trapped. Jack studied the timing of the sweeps. No, they have a pattern. They are adaptive. Everything has a pattern. He watched 2 passes, counted under his breath, then pointed toward a narrow gap 30 yards away. When the left one turns, go. That is your plan. It is the part you need. The drone turned. Go. Lena ran. Jack followed 5 seconds later, moving neither gracefully nor quickly, but arriving behind the next barrier without taking a penalty. Across the course, another cadet tried to outrun 2 drones and triggered a failure beacon. Jack heard the frustrated shout behind him, but kept moving. By the time the class reached the high-gravity sector, the ranking board had changed again. Dax remained first. Jack was 14th. Ver folded his arms. Still unimpressive. Rebecca pointed at another column. Look at recovery rates. Jack's heart rate had returned toward baseline faster than anyone except 2 cadets from heavy-gravity worlds. More important, his water consumption remained steady. His pace remained steady. His decision accuracy remained steady. Dax crossed into the increased gravity field first and immediately slowed. His species had evolved on a world with gravity nearly 20% lower than Earth's. Jack entered several minutes later. The weight settled across his shoulders. His knees complained. His pack suddenly felt like someone had filled it with bricks. He took a breath and muttered, Okay, that is annoying. Lena, struggling beside him, stared. Annoying? I did not say fun. For the first time all morning, Jack began passing cadets without changing pace. 13th, 11th, 9th. Dax looked back from the ridge and saw the human getting closer. His expression changed. Not fear. Not yet. Something more dangerous to a proud man. Doubt. Then the academy speakers crackled overhead. All cadets prepare for Phase 2. Jack checked the course clock. It was not even noon. Rebecca turned sharply toward Vare. Phase 2 is scheduled after an 8-hour recovery period. Vare entered his authorization code. Far ahead, the artificial sky darkened as the temperature began falling with impossible speed. Not today, he said. The temperature dropped 40 degrees in less than 3 minutes. Jack felt the sweat inside his shirt turn from uncomfortable to dangerous as cold air rolled through the artificial canyon. Around him, cadets who had been fighting heat moments earlier suddenly faced the opposite problem. Lena wrapped her arms across her chest. This transition is not supposed to happen this fast. Apparently the schedule changed, Jack said. That is not funny. Was not meant to be. He opened his pack, pulled out a dry base layer, and tossed it to her. Put that on. Lena stared at it. You need this. I have another. You pack too. Colorado. She still looked confused. Mountains. That explanation somehow made even less sense to her, but she stopped arguing. The next 6 hours stripped away everything that had made the course feel like a competition. Darkness came first. Then navigation equipment began failing by design. Artificial wind climbed past 40 miles per hour. Visibility dropped below 50 feet, and every cadet received a simulated rescue assignment while already exhausted from the morning. Jack stopped watching the rankings entirely. He knew this kind of tired. Not this planet, not these machines, not these alien bodies moving around him, but the mental fog was familiar. Years earlier, during a winter search outside Aspen, he had spent 19 hours looking for 2 missing hikers while snow erased his tracks almost as quickly as he made them. He had been scared then. Really scared. Anyone who claimed otherwise had probably never been responsible for another person in bad weather. Jack had learned something simple that night. Fear could ride with you. It just did not get to drive. Mercer. Lena's voice sounded wrong. Jack turned. She was 20 yards behind him, standing motionless beside a navigation marker. Come on. I cannot. He walked back. You can. My hands are numb. Then stop trying to use them. She stared at him. That is your advice? For the next 30 seconds. Jack took her navigation unit, clipped it to his vest, and guided her toward a sheltered section of rock. Breathe slower. I am breathing. You are trying to inhale the whole atmosphere. Lena almost laughed, which was what he wanted. Her breathing settled. A rescue beacon sounded farther down the trail. Jack checked the signal. Their assigned casualty was still 3/4 of a mile away. Can you walk? He asked. Lena nodded. Then we walk. They found the training dummy inside a collapsed shelter simulation, a 200-pound load designed to force teams to cooperate. Dax arrived seconds later with 2 cadets. We carry it straight to checkpoint 9, Dax said. Shortest route. Jack studied the terrain display. That route crosses the exposed ridge. It saves 12 minutes. Wind is getting worse. Dax stepped closer. You worried about your ranking? Jack looked at him. No. I am worried about carrying this thing twice. Dax ignored him. The group took the ridge. Jack went with them because splitting the team would be worse. Halfway across, the wind increased again. One cadet stumbled and triggered a medical withdrawal warning. Then another dropped to one knee. The 12 minutes Dax had saved disappeared immediately. Jack said nothing. He shifted more of the dummy's weight onto his shoulder and kept the group moving until they reached checkpoint 9. By then Lena could barely keep her eyes open. Jack, she whispered. I need a minute. Her knees gave way before he answered. Jack caught her under the arms and lowered her carefully onto the padded ground. A medical drone descended, lights scanning across her face. Dax looked toward the next marker. If we stop, we lose placement. Jack was already opening Lena's emergency kit. Go. The team's score matters. Then go score. Dax hesitated. For the first time, nobody followed him. Above them, Vare watched Jack surrender 7 ranking positions while Lena's condition stabilized. He just threw away his advantage, Vare said. Rebecca studied another monitor. No. He made a decision. Vare turned toward her. Based on emotion. Based on experience. On the course, Lena finally opened her eyes fully. You should have left me. Jack handed her water. Not how I was trained. A shadow fell across them. Dax had returned. He looked irritated, embarrassed, and much more tired than he wanted anyone to notice. Jack watched him reach for the water station and missed the handle on his first attempt. Dax quickly tried again. Nobody else reacted. Jack did. He had seen that tiny mistake before. In firefighters. In hikers. In himself. He looked at Dax's unfocused eyes, then up toward the observation cameras. "Commander," Jack said into his radio, suddenly serious. "Stop the test. Stop the test." Vare's voice came through Jack's radio, calm enough to make the words feel colder than the wind. "On what authority, Cadet Mercer?" Jack kept his eyes on Dax. He is losing coordination. His reaction time is off, and he missed a stationary handle twice. Dax straightened immediately. "I am fine." "You are not." "I said I am fine." Jack stepped closer. Dax's breathing was shallow now, his attention drifting between Jack and the course marker, as if focusing on both required too much effort. Lena had seen it too. "Commander," she said, "Mercer may be right." Vare checked the medical display from the observation deck. Dax's numbers were elevated, but every indicator remained inside the approved tolerance range for his species. "Cadet Corin is medically cleared to continue." Jack looked toward the nearest camera. "Those numbers are behind him." "You are questioning Academy medical systems." "I am looking at the patient." Dax's expression tightened. "I am not your patient, human." A new signal sounded. The next checkpoint activated half a mile ahead, and Dax turned toward it before anyone could stop him. "Dax," Jack called. "Leave me alone." Dax started across the uneven ground, pushing harder than he had all afternoon. Jack swore under his breath and followed. "Mercer," Vare warned, "return to your assigned route." Jack ignored him. Dax made it perhaps 200 yards before his stride shortened. He reached for a guide cable, caught it on the second attempt, then stopped as though he had forgotten why he was holding it. Jack closed the distance. "Sit down. Get away from me." "Dax, I will not lose to you." Jack stared at him. "This is not about me." Dax tried another step. His legs gave out. Jack caught his training harness before he reached the ground and eased him onto the padded surface. The medical drone arrived seconds later, suddenly filling the air with warning tones that had not existed on Vare's display moments before. "Core temperature instability," the drone announced. "Neuromuscular impairment detected. Immediate recovery protocol recommended." Lena reached them, breathing hard. She looked directly into the camera. "Still medically cleared?" Silence answered her. Jack opened Dax's cooling pack and placed it against the approved recovery points on his uniform. Dax's eyes opened halfway. "Did I finish?" "No." Dax looked crushed. Jack adjusted the pack. "You are also not dead, so let us call today mixed." A weak sound escaped Lena that might have been a laugh. Vare's voice returned. "Mercer, you abandoned the objective, left your assigned sector, and compromised your individual score." Jack kept working. "Yes, sir." "Do you understand what survival certification measures?" Jack finally looked up at the camera. "I thought I did." "Then explain your decision." Jack glanced at Dax, then at Lena, then toward the distant checkpoint glowing through the artificial storm. "You gave us an injured teammate and an objective. Cadet Corin was not part of the simulation. That does not make him less injured." Vare's jaw tightened on the observation deck. "The mission comes first." Jack's expression changed. Not anger. Something quieter. "Then you picked the wrong mission." The room around Vare went still. Rebecca did not hide her reaction this time. Vare turned away from the glass. Jack had challenged his judgment in front of the entire class. And worse, the medical system had proven Jack right. Vare could end the evaluation. Instead, he entered his command authorization. Rebecca saw the environmental controls unlock. "Marcus, what are you doing?" "Removing ambiguity." He selected the final survival profile, a combination normally reserved for isolated specialist testing. Heat fluctuation, increased gravity, reduced visibility, noise stress, navigation interference, limited water access, autonomous pursuit drones. Rebecca stepped toward the console. Those conditions were never designed to run together. Vare confirmed the sequence. "Mercer believes experience matters more than our models. Let us test that belief." Across the course, warning lights changed from amber to red. Jack slowly stood as the ground beneath his boots began to vibrate. The wind died completely. For one strange second, everything became quiet. Then the temperature started climbing again. Lena looked at the sky. What did he just activate? Jack watched new hazard symbols appear on his wrist display, one after another. His tired expression sharpened. Everything. High above them, Rebecca stared at the combined environmental profile and felt her stomach drop. She had seen those numbers before. Not at Orion. Back home. She turned to Vare. Marcus, shut it down. Why? Rebecca looked through the glass at Jack Mercer, standing beneath the red warning lights. Because you did not make the course more alien to him. Vare frowned. Rebecca pointed at the screen. You just made it more like Earth. The first thing Jack noticed was not the heat. It was the silence. The artificial wind had stopped, leaving the training field strangely still as the temperature climbed past 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Then the gravity increased. His pack pulled harder against his shoulders, his sore left foot protested inside his boot, and a warning tone announced that the navigation network had gone offline. Lena stared at her wrist display. We lost the route. Then we use landmarks, Jack said. Visibility is dropping. Then we use closer landmarks. You have an answer for everything? Jack wiped sweat from his eyes. No. I just try to solve the problem in front of me. Above them, Rebecca pulled up Jack's medical profile beside the new environmental settings. Look at the pattern, she told Vare. Your course treats these hazards as separate categories because most coalition species evolved around narrow environmental ranges. Humans did not. Vare studied the data. Earth does not maintain 100 degrees and elevated gravity under artificial pursuit conditions. Of course not. You are missing the point. Rebecca enlarged the planetary record. Humans live in deserts above 100 degrees. They work in sub-zero winters. They climb mountains where oxygen drops. They operate through storms, wildfire smoke, sleep loss, contaminated water, and terrain that can change within hours. Not all at once, and not without consequences. But their survival culture assumes conditions will become inconvenient. On the course, 3 pursuit drones rose behind a ridge. Lena heard them first. Jack, I see them. The machines accelerated, throwing bright tracking beams across the rocks. Jack did not run straight ahead. He moved downhill. Wrong direction, Lena said. They expect us to take the ridge. How do you know? Because I would take the ridge. Jack gave her a quick look. Exactly. They entered a narrow drainage channel where the drones had to climb to maintain line of sight. Jack used the few seconds of cover to change direction again. Lena followed, exhausted but alert now. One drone reacquired them. Jack spotted an old course marker half buried in the dirt and slapped its emergency reflector upright. The drone locked onto the stronger training signature long enough for them to reach the next shelter zone. Lena dropped onto the bench inside. You tricked it with Academy equipment. I moved a sign. That sounds less impressive. Most useful things do. In the observation room, Vare watched Jack's position advance while other cadets began requesting withdrawal. He is adapting too quickly. Rebecca shook her head. He is not adapting. Vare looked at her. Then what is he doing? Using habits he already had. She opened Jack's service history. Colorado Mountain Rescue. Wildfire evacuation support. Flood response. Winter search operations. Long-duration emergency shifts. Vare read the records twice. He was not military. No, these were civilian assignments. Mostly, that landed harder than Rebecca expected. Vare turned back toward the course. He had assumed Earth's reputation came from soldiers, weapons, and exaggerated deathworld mythology. Jack Mercer had been trained to survive because somewhere on Earth, ordinary people got lost in snowstorms and somebody had to go find them. Another alert appeared. 26 cadets had withdrawn. Then 28. Jack and Lena reached the final water station, but the dispenser flashed contamination status. Lena cursed softly. We need water. Jack inspected the purification kit. We have water. We just have work first. His fingers were trembling now. Lena noticed. You are reaching your limit too. Jack paused. Yeah. You do not look worried. He gave her a tired glance. I am extremely worried. Then why are you still functioning? Jack poured the measured treatment into the container. Because worried is not the same thing as helpless. Rebecca heard the exchange through the monitoring system. So did Vare. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Vare looked at Jack's biological readings. Elevated heart rate, dehydration, muscle fatigue, stress hormones well above baseline. The human was not immune to the course. He was hurting everywhere the models predicted he should hurt. Vare finally understood what the numbers had failed to explain. This is not normal to him, he said quietly. Rebecca folded her arms. No. On the field, Jack helped Lena back to her feet. Rebecca watched him shoulder his pack again. It hurts him too. Ver looked toward the final sector as its doors opened. Then why does he keep going? Rebecca watched Jack take the first tired step forward. Because humans learned a long time ago that pain can be information without being permission to quit. The final scoreboard updated. 3 cadets remained active. Lena Voss, Jack Mercer, and, against medical orders, a new signal had just reappeared behind them. Dax Corin had left recovery. Dax should not have been standing. Jack knew that before the academy system finished announcing it. Dax appeared through the haze behind them, moving slowly, one hand gripping the guide rail, while a recovery band flashed yellow around his wrist. Lena stared at him. You were medically withdrawn. I appealed. You cannot appeal your nervous system, Jack said. Dax stopped several feet away. The arrogance was gone from his face. What remained looked more honest. I am not here to beat you. Jack waited. Dax swallowed. I came back because you stopped for me. I did not. Before Jack could answer, the final sector doors opened completely. The last stage was almost insultingly simple. 1 mile, no obstacle course, no drones. Just a straight industrial corridor under increased gravity with 4 emergency stations spaced along the route. A message appeared on their displays. Complete as a unit. Lena gave a tired laugh. Now they care about teamwork. Jack studied the instruction. Something about it bothered him. Marcus, Rebecca said from the observation room. That is not the original final objective. Ver did not look away from the monitors. I changed it. Why? Because Mercer was right. Rebecca said nothing. Ver continued quietly. A survival test that rewards abandoning the people beside you measures speed, not survival. On the course, Jack finally understood. The 3 of them had to finish together. Dax looked at the distance marker. I will slow you down. Probably, Jack said. Dax looked offended for half a second. Jack almost smiled. Come on. They moved. The first quarter mile went smoothly. Then Lena's breathing became shallow again. Jack took part of her pack. At the halfway point, Dax began drifting toward the wall. Lena moved beneath his arm before Jack could reach him. Do not make this sentimental, Dax muttered. I am preventing you from embarrassing yourself. Much better. Their pace dropped to something barely faster than a walk. Jack's left foot burned with every step. His shoulders felt like concrete. The strange thing was that he could finally see the end, and that made stopping more tempting, not less. He thought about cold mornings in Colorado, gas station coffee at 4 in the morning, rescue calls arriving just as a shift was supposed to end. Nobody felt heroic during those moments. Mostly they felt tired and wished they were home. Jack had always thought that was the part people left out of the stories. Ordinary people rarely kept going because they felt powerful. They kept going because somebody still needed them. 200 yards, Lena said. Dax laughed weakly. Your species measures everything strangely. You picked a bad time to complain about miles. I meant humans. That too. They crossed the final marker together. The alarm stopped. Gravity returned to normal, so quickly Jack nearly stumbled. Medical drones entered from both sides, guiding Lena and Dax toward recovery mats. Across the academy, the scoreboard began filling with final results. 29 withdrawals. 2 assisted completions. 1 unassisted completion. Jack Mercer. Jack stared at the result. That is wrong. Ver's voice came over the speaker. You completed every required stage without medical withdrawal. They crossed with me. Their earlier withdrawals remain on record. Jack looked toward Dax and Lena. Then the record is stupid. Ver almost objected. Instead, he shut off the scoreboard. An hour later, the training chamber looked exactly as it would 36 hours after Jack had first arrived at Orion. Red recovery lights. Exhausted cadets. Medical drones moving between them. Jack sat on an emergency supply case with his boot unlaced and his hands still shaking. He opened the lunch Rebecca had packed for him that morning. Turkey sandwich. Apple. Chips. Nothing remotely legendary. Ver approached while Jack took the first bite. Cadet Mercer, what are you doing? Jack swallowed. Lunch, sir. Your class just recorded the highest failure rate in academy history. Jack glanced toward the recovery area. Everybody stable? Yes. Then that sounds like paperwork. Ver stared at him. You completed a course designed to break specialists from deathworld environments, and you have nothing to say? Jack considered that while chewing. It was a rough morning. Dax pulled away his oxygen mask. A rough morning? Jack looked over. You okay? Dax stared at him for several seconds, then started laughing. Lena joined him. Soon even Rebecca was smiling behind the observation glass. Ver did not. He was watching a different screen now, one containing Jack's full service history and Earth's environmental classification. For the first time, the commander was no longer asking whether humanity deserved to be at Orion. He was wondering whether Orion understood survival at all. The Academy review began the next morning, and for once, Jack was not the person everyone wanted to question. Commander Ver stood before the senior instructors with the Class 7 results floating behind him. 32 cadets had entered. Most had required withdrawal or assistance. The numbers looked ugly, but Ver no longer seemed interested in defending them. The course did not fail, he said. Our definition of survival did. Dax sat beside Lena in the front row. Jack remained near the back with his left foot wrapped, holding a cup of coffee Rebecca had brought him. One instructor pointed toward his record. Cadet Mercer completed the course. That suggests the evaluation worked. No, Dax said. Every head turned. A week earlier, Dax would have enjoyed the attention. Now he looked almost uncomfortable with it. Mercer did not defeat us. The course did. He simply recognized what was happening before we did. Lena nodded. We were trained to treat discomfort as evidence that conditions were becoming unacceptable. Jack treated discomfort as information. Ver looked toward Jack. Would you agree? Jack lowered his coffee. Mostly. Sometimes discomfort means you need to stop. Sometimes it means you need dry socks. A few instructors laughed. Ver did not, but something close to amusement touched his face. He changed the display. Earth appeared above the room, blue and ordinary looking from space. Beside it came a list of environmental classifications: deserts, hurricanes, blizzards, wildfires, high-altitude regions, dangerous oceans, disease exposure, temperature extremes. I believe humanity exaggerated its death world status, Ver said. I was wrong for a more interesting reason than I expected. Humans do not survive because these conditions are harmless to them. They survive because generations of humans developed practical knowledge for functioning when conditions are not harmless. Rebecca leaned against the wall, arms folded. That was as close to an apology as Marcus Ver probably knew how to give. Ver turned toward Jack. Your individual completion record will stand. Jack shook his head. I do not want it. It is accurate. Not really. Jack nodded toward Lena and Dax. I would not have finished the last mile without them. And Dax would not have finished anything if we had treated him like a score instead of a person. Dax looked down, suddenly fascinated by the floor. Jack continued. If this place teaches survival, maybe the record should show who came home, not who came first. The room became quiet. Ver studied him for a long moment, then erased the individual ranking. In its place appeared a new classification, unit completion. Effective immediately, Ver said. Class 7 will be redesigned. Months later, Orion cadets would complain about the changes. They carried extra water. They learned basic field medicine. They practiced making decisions while tired. They were taught that turning back for a teammate was not automatically failure. And, to the confusion of several alien species, every survival pack now contained 2 pairs of dry socks. Jack never became the Academy's strongest cadet. Dax could outrun him. Lena could solve navigation problems faster. Half the class could lift more weight. Jack was perfectly happy with that. On graduation morning, Ver found him outside the cafeteria watching sunlight spread across the plateau. Mercer, Commander, I have been reconsidering a question. Jack waited. What does humanity call someone trained to survive a death world? Jack thought about mountain rescue crews, firefighters, paramedics, parents driving through snow to get their kids home, and ordinary people who kept moving through bad days without believing anyone would ever tell stories about them. Depends, he said. On what? Jack picked up his duffel bag. Whether they remembered to pack lunch. Ver finally laughed. Jack walked toward the shuttle, leaving Orion behind him. The Academy had expected humanity to teach them how to endure heat, cold, gravity, and exhaustion. Instead, one quiet human had taught them something harder. Strength was not pretending nothing hurt. Courage was not refusing to be afraid. Survival was knowing what mattered when you were tired, scared, uncomfortable, and still had a choice to make. Sometimes the strongest person in the room was simply the one who remembered that nobody was supposed to make it home alone.